Welcome to Astro Weekly, where we start the week with a Mercury retrograde. As some of you may have noticed, I was absent for a week. That is because I have been going through a lot with my family. You know, it's a tough journey, and he has some health issues, pretty serious, and he's chronically ill. He's a dialysis patient, which is already putting a lot of stress on everyone for a couple of years. But last week I had to call an ambulance in the middle of the night, and he was taken to the hospital and had to stay there for a week. So excuse me for not making a video. I was not really able to concentrate at all. So, you know, it's been pretty tough, to be very honest. But I know that a lot of us are going through pretty challenging, difficult times. And for those who have listened to me for a long time, this is, you know, a lot is astrologically explained. And especially if you have, you know, your planets going through heavy transits, such as, you know, especially Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto transits are very intense. Yeah, we start this week with a Mercury retrograde on Tuesday. Mercury stations retrograde at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. And I've mentioned this before because there was a very strong pre-shadow period for at least 2 weeks. We were working with that 22 degrees of Sagittarius very intensely because we started a Mercury retrograde at the beginning of the year that also ended at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. Now it begins at 22 degrees. And it's going to go back, of course, to that degree point next year in January. So 22 degrees of Sagittarius seems to be a point that we are all collectively working with. And so you can look at the house where 22 degrees of Sagittarius falls for you, if you have any personal planets. Between 6 degrees and 22 degrees of Sagittarius, you're being affected personally. Mercury is about the mind, right? Anything about thinking, concepts, words, and therefore also communication. And it's also about trade, import, export, business. It's also about mobility, so vehicles, you know, especially with wheels, so cars, bicycles, or public transport. It's also your neighborhood, so the people close by. It's also potentially your siblings or other family members besides your parents. So that could be aunts and cousins and all that. So the problem with a retrograde, because Mercury is the closest planet to us, this affects us quite strongly. And so you might experience communication issues, you know, fumbling around words, not being able to express yourself fully like you normally can, you know, lost for words. Even today, I wasn't able to pronunciate communication. You know, I said it wrongly 2 times. Finally, by the 3rd time, I was able to say it. Stuff like that. That's very small, but also you can make mistakes with communication. You can write things you didn't want to say. You can say things you didn't want to say. You can also be lost in translation, right? People not understanding you while you think you're very clear. And because Mercury rules Gemini, and therefore everything comes in 2s often, especially with the retrograde, you're reevaluating things, you're going over old projects, old people, old situations. It's like a revision period of looking back to things that are unfinished or just not dealt with correctly, and so there is unfinished business, and therefore with a retrograde, it's possible you have to redo something or do something twice. Especially during a retrograde, if you start something, it's likely that you'll have to definitely redo, or that you come back to something, redoing something that you already had been working on or was an issue on about in the past, okay? So things are coming up from before, and maybe if we have been working with this degree point, 22 degrees of Sagittarius, around January of 2024, then you might have an idea of what happened to you around that time, or collectively what happened around that time. We're back in the revision. We need to look back at things. Sagittarius themes that Mercury goes over can be justice, can be public communication, so publishing, bringing it out into the public. This is teaching, mentoring, coaching, you know, and trying to inspire people. So they could be very broad themes, but it's definitely about also religion, what you believe in, your faith, and it's learning more. It's gaining perspective by looking at several topics, several perspectives, several information to try to find the facts, the truth. So we're looking at more resources, more stuff we want to learn about, and yeah, as I said, the house will be a telling sign for you personally, what you are revisiting. This retrograde lasts until December 15th. And as I said before, it's very unfortunate that this week is, on Friday is the Black Friday, right? Which is often about electronic, huge discounts in electronics. But that is something that Mercury governs. So you just have to keep in mind that things during a Mercury retrograde just are not long term. So if that's okay with you, then, you know, I always find it very interesting to know that you're in a pre-shadow period and in a Mercury retrograde, because then when things go wrong and there's miscommunication and all that, you really laugh about it, which is actually a Sagittarius theme as well. It's looking at the lighter side of things. It's, you know, understanding the humor. It's about having more fun and being able to laugh about it as well if you can. So yeah, until December 15th, this is something we're working with. Be careful with not seeing the facts. Be careful with not seeing the details. So this is very relevant when you make agreements or contracts as well. Just be mindful. When we look at the kind of aspects, so the storyline that Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is working with, we see a very strong opposition with the ruler of Sagittarius, which is Jupiter, who is now retrograde as well in Gemini. So we're really, it's all about information. It's all about communication. It's all about fact checking. It's all about revisiting, right? Revisioning, re-looking back at, it's about redoing and really looking at all the information and making sure you do find out the truth. And it may be very difficult at this time, because probably due to the next aspect that it's working with, especially at the beginning of this retrograde, so this week specifically, is a square to Neptune, who is also retrograde in Pisces. Normally when Neptune is direct, this can be very, you know, illusions and deceit and all of that. There is a lucky side to Neptune being retrograde. So basically we're going to see disillusionment. You know, things you believed in turning out not to be real. You're now able to look beyond and push through the bubbles and see the facts, and it can be very harsh. So we have to adjust our perspectives. We have to adjust our beliefs, and we have to process the disillusionment. And so there's a lot of forms of information that we're working with. This is also non-factual, so it's not necessarily something you see on the news or in books. This is also intuitive information that you have to process, and it's really about you know, enhancing your belief and your faith somehow. On Monday, there's also another interesting energy that starts. The Sun in Sagittarius is making a grand fire trine with Mars in Leo and the North Node in Aries. So this whole week, we should feel very energized and motivated regarding our passions, our life goals, our life purpose, and kind of feeling a bit more joy, and I hope we do. Another thing that starts this week is or restarts this week, is the Saturn square Jupiter that we also had in August, but because these both planets are now retrograde, we come at the square again. So this week starts with Saturn retrograde at 12 degrees of Pisces and Jupiter retrograde at 17 degrees of Gemini. To me, that's a 5-degree orb, and so the square starts. And of course, it tightens in the coming days and weeks. What does this mean? Well, obviously, because we've been through it in August, I have talked about this, and to me, it eventually felt like a birthing energy of contraction. So, you know, Jupiter energy widens and makes it bigger. And then the Saturn shrinks the energy and constructs and you know, tightens. And so these both, Jupiter and Saturn, are making this kind of, you know, push-pull, you know, contracting, expanding kind of energy. And so, well, to me, that's what happens during child labor, right? So it's the energy of the birth canal, of the baby moving through it, and, you know, you're having contractions. So that's the energy that I feel between these two, and it's very meaningful. So the contraction birthing process of Saturn square Jupiter makes a lot of sense to me from a bigger picture perspective, because next year we're going to have a lot of new starts, huge changes, when massive planets move into new signs, and especially Saturn and Neptune into Aries, the beginning of the zodiac. So there is a huge soul evolution going on. Of course, we've just had Pluto going into Aquarius, who's going to stay there for 20 years. So this expanding and contracting energy is how we can experience it as roadblocks, difficulties, hurdles, you know, being halted somewhere, not being able to do what you want to do. And it's also an authority clash, you know. Saturn is Kronos and Jupiter is Zeus, which is father and son. So there is a clash of authority as well. And, you know, where Saturn is very much about mastery and maturity, and in Pisces it is about transcending the material. And Jupiter has a bit of that element because it is Piscean in nature as well. But it's very much about searching for meaning. It's about expanding our knowledge and our horizon to take in bigger concepts, bigger ideas, bigger insights. It represents, in Gemini, the things we need to learn and the information we need to digest, and to kind of find out what is true, what is not, what is real, what is fake. So there is a lot of like misinformation vibes, and it's hard to tell what the truth is. And we might be faced with a lot of illusions or fake information. And so the challenge is to grow our intuitional power, to weigh and discern what is real and what is not. And for that, we need to find the facts. You know, we need to look at the Sagittarius energy, which is going to be a T-square with this. Later next week, when the sun moves into a T-square with this energy. So yeah, it's something we're working with all through December. and it starts this week. So you might feel some blockages and like things not going your way. And it's both Mercury retrograde related and the Jupiter square Saturn. It is interesting that actually, now that I say that, in August, when we had this Jupiter square Saturn, we also had a Mercury retrograde just like now. But that Mercury retrograde was in Leo. In August, the Mercury retrograde started at 4 degrees of Virgo and moved back into Leo and all the way down to 21 degrees of Leo. So it was kind of more of a Leo retrograde, where now we're in a Sagittarius retrograde. Both are fire signs, and it is interesting that during this square of this battle, this face-off of conflicts between Saturn, the maturity, versus Jupiter, the wanderer, you know, free-spirited, kind of, you know, a bit unfocused and perhaps undisciplined, especially from Saturn's view. So apparently our mind is really being reworked, and there are stuff we need to revisit. I also feel, true in Mercury retrograde vibes, just to get back to that energy that starts on Tuesday, right? I feel that the Mercury retrograde with the square to Neptune, who's also retrograde in Pisces, is also a kind of aha moment. So things are clicking, starting to click, I should say. So you're coming to an understanding of what has been going on and what some things mean, or at least mean to you. And so I really feel that the clicking energy might really occur around this retrograde until December 15th, right? So the square between Saturn and Jupiter is also significant because these are gateway planets. So they guard our solar system. They are in between the personal planets, which are close to us, and then the outer planets, which are very far away from us and cannot be seen, which is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And those three outer planets are consciousness keepers, you know? They are about consciousness evolution, soul evolution, cosmic perspectives, much more awareness and insights that are beyond the earthly reality and tie into the cosmic reality of all there is. So it's interesting that these gateway planets, together with a Mercury retrograde in both two instances, in August and right now in December, are reworking our mind and are preparing us for a soul evolution, a timeline jump or change. Because I feel it ties into the talent triangle, which is in the background, which is these two outer planets, right? That Saturn and Jupiter guard. You know, they guard the consciousness and the energy. And once you kind of complete these two energies, you can go beyond into the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And they are working very harmoniously together since quite a while, many weeks. You know, Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius is trining Uranus in Taurus, and they are both sextiling Neptune in Pisces. I feel that that ties into the square, this guarding of consciousness, making sure that we're ready for these upgrades, these frequency changes, these timeline jumps, because otherwise our mind probably cannot handle it. So there are a lot of mental upgrades going on, our consciousness, which means, like I said, we're receiving information not just from our earthly reality, but beyond. And so we want to make sure that, you know, these are not things that are being told to us, but we actually are tapping into a download of cosmic intelligence. You know, we really want to make sure that we're not being played here. Other than that, I'd say, you know, on Sunday, we have a new moon in Sagittarius at 9 degrees. And that is also squaring Saturn in Pisces. And this, you know, again, stop-go energy, delays, blocks. But it's also asking us that we have to believe. It's asking us to have faith and take things more serious. So I will get into the energy of that in a separate video. So we conclude this week that starts November 25th until December 1st with a new moon in Sagittarius, which normally would be promising and ties into that fire trine that I spoke about on Monday. So there should be some kind of flow of being inspired a little and excited and a little bit more motivated. But there are a lot of challenges that we're moving through in the coming time, especially December, I'd say, is one of those times that, you know, yeah. So even though it's a new moon and that is very promising, I think there are energies that are telling us what to focus on and what to keep in mind and what to expand and what to be aware of. So have a good week. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.